Hello, good morning, everyone, and thank you for putting in the time to join this event today. I know it's a week before holidays, so yeah, hopefully it'll be some informative material. So basically, it's the grid control for Silverlight, the new DX grid control that we have. We're gonna look at some data access, some little customization features. We'll look at themes, changing themes, and printing. Um, take a quick look at the agenda. Um, oh, it's supposed to be WCF. See, there it is first, but it's WCF RIA services, not WPF RIA services. We'll look at combining the grid control to using RIA services to data. We'll take a look at how print preview, print that out, and what exporting options you are provided. How to create unbound columns, and how just to create columns in general manually with the grid control, how to apply unbound expressions to those unbound columns, how to change the themes, and then finally we'll take a look at the right to left support in the DX grid control. Whatever time we've left, we'll take a look at the questions as it applies to the scope of this webinar, and we'll take it from there. But yeah, keep in mind that this is specifically the Silverlight grid control. So we won't be looking at the WPF variant today, but most everything should be similar. Now, the reason I say that is because if you recall from previous webinars or from our from announcements on our website, we introduced, we ported over the DX Grid, the WPF version of the DX Grid control to Silverlight as part of our effort to merge the code base of our WPF and Silverlight platform. So what this gives us in Silverlight is just some of the highlights. Is it gives us over 15 in-place editors, support for WCF RIA services. See, I did spell it right there. It has fixed columns, row and cell multi-selection, horizontal virtualization, flexible data management. We'll take a look at that in the next webinar. And finally, end user customization. And there's a lot of other features that if we wanted to get technically too deep into the product, we could look at. But for the sake of simplicity, we'll leave it at that with this webinar. So let's just go ahead and get started with the demo. And let me bring up a new instance of Visual Studio. I'll just start from scratch with everything here. All right. So let's go ahead and create a new project, new Silverlight application, and let's call it DX, not question mark, DX Grid Webinar. Okay, and we want to enable RIA services so we can bind to data from it. We'll take a look at a different way later on, but we'll go with that for now. And as it's loading, this from our DX layout control for Silverlight, so it makes my life easier. And let me go ahead and put a button at the top. I'll use this to generate the print preview. And let's do that. And add the grid control here. There it is. Go ahead and position it below the button. And let's make sure this stretches both ways to fill this area. Actually, you know what? Let's use a tab control instead of this. But yeah, I'll get back to that. So the button, I'll select the button and give it the appropriate caption. Say show print preview dot 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 small. So let's size this to 200. It's fixed size, it doesn't matter. I could have it stretch, but okay, and let's add a tab control right here. So I can just display the print preview control within the same layout, the same page. So there's the tab control, and let's give it a name. Call it DX tab control 1 for the sake of simplicity. Let's add an end tag. Let's add a couple of tab items. Well, just one for now. Grid control. So now what I'm going to do here is I'll go ahead and put the grid control in here. So through code, when we generate the print preview, it'll automatically create a second tab and show the print preview control in here. All right. So now let's go ahead and bind it to data. To do that, since this is via services, I'll right-click on the ASP.NET project I have here, add new item. Let's go to data. I need a new entity data model. Let's call this. I'll just be using the sample Northwind database, so the products table. So I'll just call it products model. Products model. Generate from database, new connection, and running the SQL Server Express database. Northwind, make sure everything's okay. Okay, Northwind entities, that is fine. Loading the database info. Now I'm only using a single table, so products. And I'll call this the model products model, and finish. Now this is going to be a simple, read-only way of just binding it to data. It's just to keep it within the scope of this webinar. But so there's the data set that was created, the schema, and I'll rebuild the solution so I can go ahead and continue here. All right, so there's my web project. Now I need a domain service. So add a new item, go to web, and domain service class. I'll rename this to products service. All right, I want the products entities, and see, I have an option to expose an OData endpoint as well, but I'm not going to use it for this example. And here it is. Just a service class, data set. Reloading the designer, of course, and here we go. All right, so I'll switch to the code view, and before I continue, what I'll do is I'll need to add a reference here, service model, domain services, client, and also I need to reference the web project itself. There we go. Now let me just, to make this a little quicker, I'll go ahead and paste these lines of code here. So I'm creating a new products context, and these two lines of code, which what it does is I'm creating a new load operation to get the products queries, and finally to get the entities, the data set, to populate it into the grid control. I'll set the data source property for it. Now, let's just go ahead and run it as is right now, just to say it bind to the data. No, actually, it will not bind to it will bind to data, but you won't see any columns, because what I need to do here is on the grid control, I need to tell it to automatically auto-populate the columns. So automatically create columns and populate them with the data. So now let's go ahead and run it. And build was successful. It's on my second monitor, so let's bring it over here. Go. All right, here it is. So yeah, it bound to the sample database and created all the columns automatically and populated it with data. So now I need to get the print preview working. So let's go back here and select the button. I'll use the click event. All right, so here, what I'm going to do is add some more namespaces that I'll need for printing to actually work. So it's XPF core printing, printing data nodes, grid, and utilities. And for the code itself, I'll paste that as well, so we don't spend time just typing them through one by one. So here it is. We're creating a new preview. We're creating a new data node link. We're passing the grid controls, the current view, as an iRoot data node source interface. This is the export service URL. This is actually built in, so we're not creating this manually right now. It's just an export option saying if we're exporting to HTML to embed the images inside the HTML, so you don't have a folder full of HTML images. The model, we create the model and then assign it to the preview's model property. And what's happening here is I'm creating a new tab item, putting the preview inside it. Actually, this was supposed to be lowercase. And yeah, basically add this new tab item to the tab control and make that the selected tab item and create a document preview. That is basically it. So if I go ahead and run it, by the way, I'll be making this project available in a blog post later on, so you can take a look at it. So here it is. Here's the grid control again, populated with the data. I'll click on Show Print Preview, and there's the new tab control, and here's the print preview. And yeah, you can see there's some margin issues that is putting it aside, so I can just select and the page setup as you'd expect. You can actually say 25 on the right, 0.25 on the left. All right. So yeah, here it is. It is. I can go ahead and print this, or I can go ahead and export it to any of these file formats without any issues. The zoom in, zoom out functionality is there as well. Or I can flip through pages from here. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at how I can manually create columns in the grid control, and how I can create an unbound column, put an unbound expression, and use that to populate that set column, that specific column. Now we'll continue working in the same project. We won't start a new one. So let's go ahead and we'll keep all of this. I'll switch to the XAML code. And let's make this bigger so we can actually see the code. Now, first and foremost, I'll need to get rid of the auto-populate columns property, because I'm going to be creating columns manually myself. So I'll use that refactor feature to create a new end tag, for it. and I'll start with a columns collection. And here I can specify grid columns, field names. I made notes of this earlier, so yeah, I don't have all the field names memorized. So it's the product name. The header would be the same pretty much with a space inside. So let's just go ahead and copy this and paste 3 more. And what I'll do, this one will be quantity per unit. Right. Now, you don't necessarily have to specify the header. The reason I'm doing this is just so you can see, you can always override what the field name provides you. You know, the field name it actually provides you as a caption. So, price, and last one, units in stock. Now these last 2 columns are what we're going to use for the unbound columns expression tool. There we go. So these are all bound columns. So if I were to just go ahead and run this right now, you'll see that the actually let me go back real quick. Create a table view and set the auto width property. So you know because I have a few columns and my screen's bigger, my resolution's bigger, so I want the columns to fit to fill the entire area. So what I'll do is grid control view, and in here I'll have table view, and so the auto width property equals to true. Alright, so let's go ahead and run it again. I have a mistake somewhere. Oh, I have it outside the grid control. Clumsy. There we go. Okay. Run it again. Would have made sense outside the grid control. Doesn't know where it belongs. So here we are again. So now you see the same data, except it's selected only the columns that I specified, you know, manually in there. So what I want is I want a 5th column on the right side here, and basically I want to say it's going to be our inventory total, and we're gonna say the unit price times the unit stock value, units in stock value, and that's going to be the 5th column's data. So let's go ahead and create that. So another grid column, field name, I'll just call it total. I won't specify a header for it. I'll say it is unbound. As a matter of fact, it may contain a decimal value. I'm not sure if all the unit prices are integers. It might be decimal. Bound expression. So what I'll do is I'll say the price on the unit price field times the number of units in stock. And finally, to be able to customize this at runtime, I'll set the unbound expression editor to true. Now keep in mind that once I set this to true, it's only going to apply to this one specific grid column. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, here we are. And it turns out, nope, there is a couple of decimals, so the setting this column unbound type to decimal was not in vain. That is good. So you'll see it's the value of unit price times units in stock, and it's creating this unbound column, which is about 20 data, will be dynamically updated, and the values populated in here. Now, if I were to say, provide an end user at runtime to be able to customize this, right, based on their needs, or let's say I just want to customize it right now, I would right-click anywhere on the column and see there's the expression editor item. It's not present on any other column, and that's specifically because I set it on this column in XAML. So when I launch this, there's the expression editor window, and it actually gives me a ton of options what I can do. But in this case, just to keep things simple, just go ahead and multiply this by 2 again. Now just pay attention here on the right side, the total column, you have all these values, 702 being the first one. Go ahead and click OK, and there it is, everything's double. Expression editor, let's remove that. We're back to the original, and of course, as is, the grid right now gives you all the standard features. There's the filter drop down. You can group by. That is not a good thing to group by. Let's group by product name, and there it is. So we'll then in the next webinar we'll take a look at all the units in stock and not units in stock, the filtering and summary items, options, and whatnot. So we'll revisit that item in the next webinar. Now that was what you saw there was the default light gray theme. What we're going to do now is we're gonna change the theme. Now for Silverlight we provide 5 themes in total. So let's go ahead and set the theme to a different one. Solution Explorer. For that, I'll need to add the appropriate assembly references up here. Scroll down to, alright, these 5 that say themes. Right, so it's the light gray, that's the default. We have deep blue and these 3 variants of the office theme. So I'll go ahead and add that to the project. And right before the initializer, well, if you're just applying theming, you got to make sure you have the xpf.core assembly referenced up here with a using statement. Since I already have it, I'll just come down here and it's a theme manager, and I'll set the application theme property to theme. You can see the themes are now available here in this list. I'll use deep blue. I'll use deep blue for this one, and go ahead and run it. Loading the page, and now what you'll see here is that not only did I used this button in the beginning on purpose, because not only did the skin apply to our tab control and our grid control, of course, this is a standard Silverlight button that I use, and you can see that it's the skin was applied to this button as well. So everything has a uniform look and feel right now. If I were to go back, let's go ahead and change it to one of the office ones real quick. Office, select the black. Run this again. Loading, and here it is. Same scenario. The button's skin as well, and there's the our tab control and our grid control themed accordingly. Now, the next thing I wanted to show, the last thing actually I wanted to show as part of this demo was going to be the full RTL support, to left language support in our grid control. So this is sort of an introduction to the grid control and some of its features. So we've covered this, but we'll look at how to, since I don't have a SQL Server database running with data that's in the right to left language, I'll just be doing everything through code. So you'll see how you can populate a grid control at design time at runtime through code. So let's go ahead and let me just keep this one open. I'll create a new instance of Visual Studio, and we'll we'll start from there. So this is really useful. I mean, if you're in the market, if you're marketing your application to countries that do use right-to-left languages, you can simply have this as an option in there. So I'm not going to enable RIA services since I'm binding this differently. And I'll wait for it to load. Alright, there it is. So I'll add the grid control. Make sure it fills the entire area. And now let's just go back to switch to code view here. So before I start, I'm going to bind this to an observable collection, a collection of products. Basically, it's a list of products that I'm creating right now manually. It can be created at runtime or right now at design time through code, and it can be used to dynamically populate the grid control. So to get started with that, I'll need a reference to system.collections object model. Now down here, I'll come outside the class, and I'll go ahead and paste this code to save on time. Alright, here it is. So here's the class, and here's the product list that uses the class to populate it with the list of items. And you can see, these are all created in, using the Arabic alphabet. This is in Farsi, but it's the same alphabet, and it's an excellent example of using right-to-left support in our product. Now you'll notice that up here, it's the product list inherits from the observable collection of type product, which is what we're getting from up there. So let's go ahead and run this as is right now, and you'll see why I did this. If I run this right now, see again, no columns, nothing was populated automatically. Even if they were populated, it would not automatically pick it up as a right to left. So what I'll do is I'll switch back to the XAML editor here, and let's create an end tag for this. Let's add the columns collection. The reason I'm doing this, I could have it populate the columns automatically, but the reason I'm doing this is because I actually want to demonstrate that you can have right to left content in the fields as well, in the headers of each column as well. So I want that, and I also want to set the table view again. Grid control. So the columns are stretched to fill the entire width of the control. And I'll add a table view, and the property would be auto width. Okay, and finally, the most important part for this would be to set the flow direction of the entire control. So left to right is everything by default. I want to specify right to left. Finally, the reason it wasn't even bothering with any data in the beginning was because I had forgotten to set the grid controls data source. So it didn't know there was any data for it. So I want it to be a new product list. And that's it. I'm going to run this. And here it is. The font is somewhat small, I guess, the default font. So I'll zoom in to, let's say, 200%. And here it is. You see everything's reversed. There's the indicator row, the columns. I can group by column, and so on and so forth. So this was pretty much the pre-holiday introduction to the DX Grid control. Within its original webinar context. So yeah, let me know if there's any questions.
Hey, Emil.
Yes.
So we did have some questions. They've all been answered on the back end. I don't know if you want to take a look at any of them specifically, but so far they've all been answered. If there's any more questions, get them in now.
Well, in the meantime, Amanda, you want to do the sponsor announcements?
Oh,
Sort of.
Our DevExpress sponsor announcement. Yeah, I just thought you might want to take a look at what's already been answered and see if there's anything
I'm reading
specific.
Through it.
Awesome. Right. So we are nearing the end of 2010. Can you believe it? And the DevExpress Microsoft New York City GiveCamp is coming up January 14th through the 16th, 2011, and DevExpress is helping them out with that. We are actually sending an entire team up there. GiveCamp is a weekend for software developers, designers, and other technical professionals give back to local nonprofits in their community. So for more information and to join up, you can visit the GiveCamp website at nycgivecamp.org. And if you want to learn more about DevExpress products, we have hundreds of product tutorials up on the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com, including quite a few new 10.2 feature videos.
All right, so I'll go back to the questions here. There's a question from Carl, and absolutely, that is possible. However, that's going to be a big part of the next webinar. I don't want to take it away from that and demo it here, but yeah, it will focus. The one I have coming up on January 10th will specifically focus on working with data at design time. It'll serve to be a sort of a tutorial that you could actually pass on to the end user as well. But in the meantime, we have lots of documentations. Or if you want to just shoot me an email after this, I'll go ahead and send you an example if you'd like. Or maybe a short screencast, and we can take it from there. Would be very interested in a webinar blog entry on how to bind grid to unstructured OData where you don't have a proxy ahead of time and need to parse in the elements in the OData data. I do believe we had an example like that with our grid control at some point, but yeah, Tony, I'll look into that and see what we can put together as a tutorial of some sort.
Great.
And anything else?
I guess while we wait on questions too, we have our final webinar of 2010 tomorrow on CodeRush. It's working with selections and the clipboard in CodeRush, and it's with Mark Miller, and it's at noon tomorrow. It's not at our regular 10 a.m. time slot. It's at noon Pacific Standard Time, and that is our last and final webinar of 2010. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is the end of 2010. You're right. Wow. Time flies. So yeah, if there are no other questions, we're going to end this earlier today. Can Amanda videos be shared with end users? Well, we have a big collection of videos or webinar videos. Well, I mean, these webinars are available recorded later on the DevExpress channel. Now, we do have that big collection of other tutorial videos that are also available, and you can use that as a reference. Yeah, we're gonna have more videos coming as well in that regard.
Okay, so if that's all the questions, Emil, you want to wrap this one up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. You can, or
okay.
Did you already do the wrap up?
No, I can do a final wrap up.
Okay, excellent. Sounds good.
So yeah, if you have any questions, you can email Emil directly. I think I posted your email It's emilm@devexpress.com. I'll put it here in the chat window for Emil. And again, if you missed anything from this webinar, or you want to review previous webinars or watch multiple product videos, visit us at the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. And tomorrow, again, we do have one last webinar at noon Pacific time on Code Rush. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.